met my friend Nick in middle school. At the time, we weren't really friends, but I did get to know him a little bit. Frankly, he scared me. When I first met him, he was one of those kids who wore all black and gave himself piercings. He would do it during class, using safety pins. He was bipolar and had a slew of other issues as well, including being on drugs at the time. Fast forward a few years to high school, and I didn't really have any friends. I was kind of a loner. I have a fall birthday, so I was one of the first kids in my class to turn 16 and get my license and start driving myself to school. Nick had since grown out of the gothy. He got on medication for his psychological problems and now seemed like a fairly normal guy. One day, he was talking to me and asked me if I could give him a ride home. I was all too happy to help, considering at the time I was pretty desperate for someone to hang out with. I ended up becoming very good friends with him and another guy he hung out with as well. The three of us pretty much spent all of high school as a tight-knit group. Looking back, I think they kind of took advantage of me, as my family had more money than either of theirs. I was happy to share though. I drove them to lunch and paid for it every time when they said they didn't have money. It would never be anything major, just a few bucks here and there. We did have some really good times too. They were pretty good guys for most of the time, but I do feel like that was at least part of the reason why they became my friends at all. Even if that was the case though, it was worth it for me because they were literally the only bright spot in my otherwise miserable high school experience. Nick could be in sometimes, especially if you spent more than a day or so with him at a time. I took a week Long Beach trip with his family and ended up spending more time with his brother than him because he drove me absolutely insane. There was even a particular incident at a go-kart track where he was literally screaming at a 10-year-old kid and trying to pick a fight with the kid's father after the race. Why, you ask? All because he cut him off on the track. Then he got pissed at me for not backing him up when I was too busy trying to crawl into a corner and pretend like I didn't know him. It was all just so ridiculous. I was embarrassed. Actually, friend or not, I was hoping the guy would kick his ass because he deserved it. After high school, Nick stayed in our hometown and went to local community college. Me and the other guy went to State University a few hours away. We actually were roommates. We would see Nick when we came home on the weekends. After that year, he joined us. Nick was really struggling though, and was in and out of school, never really trying that hard. At one point, his girlfriend from high school cheated on him, and he took it pretty hard. They started adjusting his medication. I don't think they ever got it quite right because he was never the same again. During this time, I introduced him to my girlfriend's sister. We actually had gone to school with her, but never really knew her until I started dating her sister. Anyway, they started dating as well. At first, it was cool because we could go on double dates and stuff. I was a little worried though, because I knew how he could be sometimes. I was afraid of what might happen if their relationship ever went south. Her parents really hated him. I was always trying to defend him best I could without making them hate me too. I'd since gotten engaged to my girlfriend, so I felt like I was always in the middle between my future in-laws and one of my best friends. Eventually, they got engaged too. Her parents really hated that they'd rushed into getting married. I think they'd been together less than a year at the time they moved in. Things quickly went south though. He started expecting her to support him. He quit going to school and said he was going to live on disability for the rest of his life because of all of his issues. They fought pretty much constantly, and they had only been married for about 4 to 5 months. Then he even started threatening to kill her. He even went as far as to detail the plans he had come up with to do it and get away with it. Needless to say, she left soon after, and they got divorced within less than a year. As you can imagine, this put me in quite the awkward spot of having to choose between my fiancée and her family or one of my only friends. I try to defend him as best I could. You know, he's not really like that usually. His medication is messed up. He doesn't really mean it. He won't really do that. I mean, how truly can you stick up for someone who's threatening to remember his wife though? I did the best I could, but ultimately, if I wanted to keep my fiancé, I had to lose that friend. Our other friend was supposed to have been my best man, but he refused after what happened with Nick. So I ended up losing both my friends over the ordeal. Pretty much exactly what I'd been afraid of. The next time I spoke to Nick, he came into the store I was working at with some people I had never seen before. I said hey and gave him a friendly wave, but he immediately flipped me off and walked out. That was confirmation. Our friendship was completely over. I'm not really sure how any of that was my fault, but I guess I was supposed to leave my 6-year relationship and break things off with my lover because this guy was a psychopath and threatened to kill her sister. I really wish that was the end of the story, but it continued on. Her sister found someone new who was an amazing guy and one of my now closest friends. I have far more in common with him than any of my old friends. I graduated, got married, moved homes, and now started a family. My now wife's sister got remarried to the new guy, and they had a kid together who's now 3 years old. Everyone was happy, and we pretty much forgot about Nick. That was until the day he came back into town and started working at the local grocery store. My mother-in-law was the first to notice him and pretty much forbade her daughter from shopping there. She was terrified he would come after her or her kid if he saw them. They ended up moving away to the other side of town. I wasn't as threatened by him though, so I continued to shop there. I assumed, since it had been 5 years, he must have moved on with his life. I would see him working at the register or whatever. But other than that, I really didn't go out of my way to avoid him. One day, I saw him looking at me, though I didn't speak to him because of the way our last interaction was gone. I was met with the coldest stare I'd ever seen. After that, anytime I was in the store, he would follow me around the entire time. When I left the store, he would head outside and pretend to bring carts in or something and watch me until I was in the car leaving. The last time I shopped there, I made the mistake of taking my newborn son with me. He started fussing. So, of course, I'd picked him up and tried to calm him down. At that point, Nick walked by and slammed into me, trying to make me drop my baby. Then he walked off like nothing had happened. I decided that day it would be best if I started shopping at Walmart instead. I realized that I'd forgotten to sit the trash out to be picked up. It was around 3 a.m. when I went back outside to move the cans to the curb. As I walked out of my garage, a large van with blacked out windows suddenly came down the street and stopped at the end of my driveway. I was nervous since it was 3 a.m. and it was clearly not my neighbor. I took my time fiddling with the cans beside the house, waiting to see what they were going to do. Eventually, they went down the street and stopped. I put the cans out as fast as I could and went back inside, making sure all the doors were locked. I went to sleep with my gun on the nightstand. Around this time, my grandmother's house was broken into 2. Whoever did it knew where everything was in her house because they didn't rummage through. They just took all of her sentimental items, then went straight to the closet where my grandfather's guns were, and took several of them as well. About a week later, they returned, cleaned out everything they hadn't taken the first time. We had no proof, so the cops wouldn't do anything, but I'm fairly certain it was Nick. He had been to her house before, and I had shown him the guns when we were friends, since whoever it was broke in knowing exactly what they were looking for and exactly where to find it. That narrowed down the list of suspects. Since then, I've seen that van driving around in front of my house at all hours of the night. It's becoming less frequent since I started shopping elsewhere, and thankfully, nothing more serious has happened. I have to keep a gun nearby at night now, and I'm still hoping this doesn't escalate again. I live a little bit out in the country. It's a quiet area, and most people have a little bit more land. I remember that one Saturday, late afternoon, while I was driving home, I noticed a yard sale sign.